Hi everyone, in today's real-time tutorial, I thought it would be fun to get my Inktense pencils back out and do this fun chocolate-covered strawberry that I found. I will try to have everything down in the description below, and I will try to put the reference picture on the screen here so you can follow along if you want. Now, if you don't have the Inktense pencils, you can of course use whatever medium that you have. Just try to pick colors that are as close as possible, and whereas the Inktense only has 72 colors in the set, that's what I've done anyway. I've just tried to pick colors that are going to be as close as possible. And I may go over top with my white to help create some of those highlights at the end. We'll just see how it goes. Now I will be using my Etchr hot pressed watercolor book for this, and I will be using a watercolor pen for this, but you can use a watercolor brush or whatever you have. And here I was just testing out some of the colors before we start. I'm going to go ahead and take my kneaded eraser, and I'm going to lighten the chocolate part. We're going to start there first. So I just want to lighten it a little bit so we can still see our lines. And where these Inktense pencils are pretty opaque, you don't have to completely get rid of your lines because there is a lot going on here with the different highlights and stuff. And I want it to make my sketch dark enough so that you guys could kind of see what I was doing too. Okay. So I'm going to start in the highlight areas, and I don't have my pencils super sharp because these lay down pretty well. And where this is hot pressed paper, I don't have to have them pretty sharp because I don't really want to fill the tooth. Once we blend these out, you're going to see how vibrant they are. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the 1930, which is dark chocolate, and I'm going to start working on the highlights. Now, this is a pretty opaque pencil, so I don't want to cover the whole area of the highlight. So what I'm going to do is work on the outside, but I'll leave some blank area here, and then we'll use the water to blend it in afterwards. Now, I love these Inktense pencils because, for one, they're pretty quick. They're a pretty quick medium to get things done, but they're also really fun to use. And I've had my eye on the Inktense blocks as well, so I'm sort of waiting for those to go on sale so I can pick them up because I have so much right now that I'm using for art supplies. I can't really justify paying full price for them, but it is something that I want to pick up in the future. And if you guys want to see more Inktense tutorials, then please let me know because I really do enjoy using them. But I know not everyone has them, so I'd love your feedback on that. Now I'm trying to be really soft here with putting these down because they are very pigmented. So it's sort of the opposite of with colored pencils. Like I really want to be careful of how much I'm putting this down, especially in the highlight areas. And if you naturally have a pretty heavy hand, what you could do is use like something like this, the Caren palette, and you could scratch your Inktense on this and then water it down with your water brush or your whatever you're using for water, and then put that on the paper so that you make sure you have like as less pigment as possible. And I probably could have done something like that. I was just being kind of lazy and just going right in with the pencils. But the nice thing about these being so opaque is I can always go over top with the Inktense white and help kind of tone things down and get some of our brights back in as well. And colored pencils also layer over these Inktense really nicely too. So we could always go over top with an opaque white like the Chinese white from Derwent. So that's always an option too. So I'm just leaving those white spaces where it is the brightest. And I'm really just looking at my reference photo. Now, normally I would have a piece of glassine paper or something under my hand, but where our image here isn't that big, I'm not really going over top of the picture itself, so I'm not worrying about that too much. I do have a piece off to the side if I decide that I want to, you know, put that under my hand as we go, but I think it'll be all right. Now I've tried these Inktense pencils on quite a few different papers, including the Winsor and Newton paper, Strathmore hot pressed paper, the Paul Rubens hot pressed paper, but I've not tried them in the Etchr sketchbook here, the hot pressed paper. So this will kind of be interesting to see how they work on here. Now I like how watercolor pencils and colored pencils turn out on this paper, so I don't imagine these would be any different, but we'll find out when we go to blend them. So far they're laying down just fine. And of course you can use whatever paper you have on hand. Don't worry too much about that or about the colors that you're using, just kind of have fun. Okay. So now I'm going to go in with this deep violet, which is 0760. And again, I'm going to be very, very light-handed with this. And I'm just going to run this over sort of the darkest areas. I can see a little bit of purple in some of these shadows in our reference, or highlights in our reference photo. So I'm just going to get this in a few areas, but we don't want it to overpower everything, so I'm being super, super light. And I'm not going over all of the areas either. And I hope you can see, like, as I'm going over it, you can barely see it, really. It's just to give a hint of that purpley color. And the fun thing about art is you can add whatever colors that you want. If you decide you want to add another color in here, go for it. There's really no rules with the colors that you want to use. And I'm just going to add a little bit more of this 1930, the dark chocolate, just in here a little bit. Okay. So now I'm going to start filling in our dark chocolate, or milk chocolate, I guess. And I'm going to start with the madder brown, which is 1920. And this is a little bit more of a warmer brown. And I'm going to start by outlining first, because I do want a nice edge on here. And there are some, you know, little tiny highlights along here, and I'll go in with my Inktense white pencil, or I'll go in with the white colored pencil if I have to at the end. But I'm just going to go along and outline this. And the chocolate here on the bottom, it's fairly smooth, so I'm trying to do this as smooth as possible. You don't want too many bumpy areas. And I'm just going to go ahead and lightly color in most of this with this color. So this is going to be sort of our warm undertone here. Now these blend out fairly smooth, so you don't have to be too smooth laying them down. I find a lot of water-based products, you know, you don't have to be as, like, doing the little circular motions as you would be with colored pencils. But I find I'm just still in a habit to do that, so I usually end up doing that anyway. But you can be fairly messy with this and still get pretty good results when you blend them out. And I'm not pressing too hard. This is still a light to medium pressure, so a little bit heavier than I was using for the highlights. That I was hardly putting any pressure on at all. So you can see a little bit of the difference there. And I just want to make sure some of these areas I've got enough pigment down so that when we go to blend out, there is going to be a difference between our highlight area and our chocolate area. And that's going to help make it have that more of a shiny effect, is the contrast that we're going to get between the two. Okay, and I'm going to fill in around here too on the strawberry. And as I get down to this bottom part here, I'm not going to go all the way. I'm just going to sort of lightly just kind of transition that color down here. And I'm going to get it in here. So it's a little bit darker down towards the bottom here and on the side. So I'm not putting this color as much, and then I'll put it a little bit harder, you know, from here up. Okay, so it's looking a little messy right now, but once we get everything blended out, it will come together. So I'm going to go back in with that dark chocolate, 1930, and I'm going to start darkening up a few of the areas that I see. So for instance, under this crease here where the chocolate's forming from on top of the strawberry to on the counter. So I'm going to start creating a little bit of a shadow in here, a little bit deeper. And I'm just really looking at the reference photo, just seeing where I see any areas that might be slightly darker or a little bit cooler in tone. And that's where I'm going to put this color. And I just see a little bit here and there, sort of around these curves. Okay, and I'm going to fill in this shape here. And remember, we've got a little bit of a highlight going here too, so I'm not going to cover that up, or I'm not going to try to cover that up. And same here, there's a little bit of a highlight running on either side. And down here where we left this blank as well. And then I'm just going to blend it up lightly into that warmer brown color till about this area here. And I'm just going to lightly go over this part right here as well. And remember our highlight. And I'm going to bring this color up just a little bit up here. Okay. And I'm going to go back into that Madder Brown 1920 and just glaze the middle area here, just a tiny bit. I want it to be mostly that dark color, but I just want a hint of this in there. And the same, I'm just going to glaze just a little bit here and here, just to make sure they blend nicely. Now I'm going to go in with the Sepia Ink, which is 210, and this is going to be our darkest dark, and I'm just going to put this in a couple of areas where I see it. So just along here, and I'm going to go under this strawberry, but I'm going to focus it pretty much right along the edge where the harshest shadow is. Don't know why that's so hard to say. And we can always go in after once we blend things out and make things lighter or darker and just adjust. So you don't want to put down too much right away, because we can always, adjust afterwards. Okay, and I'm going to do just a little bit right under this highlight here. Just a little bit under this one as well. And I think that's where I'm going to leave that color. Okay, so now we're going to start working on the berry part and our leaves. So I'm just going to go ahead with my kneaded eraser and just lighten these areas up a little bit. Again, you don't want to get rid of all your lines so that you lose your place, but just enough so they lighten a little bit. You're getting any extra graphite off the paper. And if they show through a little bit, that's fine. That doesn't bother me. I want to make sure that my lines are dark enough so you can still see a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to start with this mustard color 1700, and this is going to be the color I'm using for the seeds. So I'm going to go ahead and put this where I see all the seeds. And just start to get those in. Now, some of the highlight areas I've put in on the strawberry, some I haven't. I'll go back over once we blend everything out. but some of these are really bright highlights. This one's a little bit more muted, so I wanted to give myself a little bit of a guideline. But if you just want to put all your colors down first, blend them out, and then go over top and create your highlights, you can certainly do that. Now, if you're using colored pencils, or depending what other medium that you're using for this, you might be able to find some colors that are a little more accurate. But like I said, I just tried to pick colors that were close enough. It's more going to be our values that's going to create the realism of the strawberry. And again, I'm not going for completely photorealistic. I want it to look realistic like a strawberry, but I don't have to have it, you know, hyper realistic or anything like that. That's just my preference for art. You can, of course, go beyond where I take this piece and keep adding details if you like. There's no right or wrong answer for art, really, and that's another one of the fun things about it. I might just add another little spot here. And I think that's good there. So then I'm going to go ahead with the red violet, which is 0610. And this is going to be my highlight area that I'm going to lay in here and here. But like I said, we'll probably go over top of it with our colored pencils. But sort of like I did down here on the chocolate, I'm going to try to go fairly light, because these Inktense pencils are pretty overpowering. So I'm going to start off as light as I can, and if I need to add, I can always add after. So around all of our seeds, you're going to notice as the seed caves into the strawberry, there's going to be a darker area and then a highlight around some of these. And these ones down here I'll add in at the end. It's just where these highlights were bigger and more prominent, I wanted to get them in now. And I'm going to use this color down here too. Okay, and then I'm going to switch to the crimson 0530, and I'm going to fill in the rest of the highlight over here. And I'm going to go over some of this one as well and just lightly glaze. And again, I'm pressing very, very light. Okay, and I'm going to go over this area where the highlight is in here, and I'm going to try to be even lighter because this is one of our brighter highlights. Okay. So we're going to leave that there. And then I'm going to take the Poppy Red, which is 0400, and this is going to be my bright warm red. And I'm going to focus it a little bit here and a little bit here in this main area. And a little bit around these highlights, but I'm going to put a darker color just around the seeds themselves. So that's where I'm going to focus this. So I'm just getting a hint of this color right around where that highlight is. And some of the areas where the highlight's a little bit bigger, I'll put a little bit more of this color. But it's just to show that there's a hint of that bright red popping through as well. Okay, and we're going to take this and it's going to come sort of around here and then up here. And I'm just looking at the reference photo to see where it kind of goes. So I'm going to lay this color in here. And I'm getting close around the seeds, but if I don't get right up to them, that's fine because we're going to go right around the seeds with a darker color anyway. And I'm just trying to get enough pigment down so that when we blend out, there's going to be a big difference between our highlight colors and our more saturated colors. And then I'm just going to just lightly go around this edge just to help it transition into our other color a bit better. Okay. So So actually I'm just going to sharpen this one real quick because I do want a little bit of a sharper point here, but this is the Carmen Pink 0520. Okay, so now that I've got that nice and sharp, and I did just use my Derwent Super Point sharpener for that. As you can see, it gives a really nice point to this. So what I'm going to do with this color is I'm going to go around all of these seeds in this area, and then I'm going to fill in the rest of the strawberry as well. So this will be a little bit time consuming at this point, but the result we'll get will be worth it. And I'm pushing sort of like a medium pressure, I would say. Just enough pressure to get the pigment to lay down nicely. And then I'm just going to outline this edge here because I want my edges to be pretty crisp. Then I'm just going to start filling in this color. And again, I'm just following the outline of the strawberry. Just trying to create a nice border there. And here in the darker areas, I'm not worrying too much about going around because we're going to use an even darker color to go around these ones. Might still outline them anyway, just so they're a little easier to see. So I'm just going to go ahead and outline all of them right now, and then I'll just fill in with the same color. And it's just making it easier to see where I've placed those seeds for when we go in with our darker colors. And again, I'm just looking at the reference photo just to see how wide of an area the dark areas are around some of these. And then I'm just going to fill in the rest of this blank space. And again, I'm being careful where I've laid down those highlights too. And again, I'm just making sure I've got enough pigment down in some of these areas. So I'm just gonna go back over a couple of the areas. And I'm gonna go over this edge too. Okay, so I'm gonna leave that there. Then I'm going to take this 060, which is Cirage, and this is going to be my darkest color. I'm going to focus it sort of up here, and then I'm going to go around some of these berries. So I'm going to go ahead, or seeds, sorry, go around some of these seeds in the darker areas. So I'm going to go ahead and sharpen this one as well. Okay, so now that this one is nice and sharp, I'm going to start working around some of these seeds down here. Now I'm sort of going to keep this towards this bottom third here and up along the top. That's where I'm going to focus this color. And I'm not going to cover all of the red that we've laid down. But just enough to go around and create an even darker area around these seeds. And some of these seeds here, I'm just going to do it on one side. So I'm really just looking at the reference photo, just trying to pick out where I see those darker spots. Okay, and then I'm also going to go ahead and glaze this color just in the darkest area, which is pretty much around here. And I'm pushing a little bit harder on the edges here where I want it to be a little more defined. And that's where I'm going to keep that. And then I'm just going to go one last time with that Poppy Red 0400 and just really make sure this area is nice and bright. And I'm going to overlap the colors just a little bit. And I'm just going to go back in, just darken up around a couple of these. And I might even go back in with that mustard color and just really make sure that that color pops on some of these, especially in the darker areas. Okay. So now I'm going to go into the leaves and I'm going to start with this felt green, which is 1530. And I'm pretty much just going to go over top of all the leaves with this. And again, where I just want defined edges, I just put a little bit harder. And then I just fill in. So I'm just filling in the main shapes and then we'll go in and put our shadows in. And again, in some of these bigger petals, I just want to make sure, or leaves, I guess, I want to make sure I've got enough pigment down. Then I'm going to go in with the beach green, which is 1510. And I'm just going to start putting this towards the bottom of our leaves here just to create some shadows. And then I'm going to go in with that 0600 and just lightly glaze that towards the bottom of our leaves on top of our shadow. And that's just going to help darken it up even more. And because we have that color along here, it is going to reflect a little bit onto our leaves. So I don't want it to be overpowering, but I want to have some cohesion too. And I might even take some of that beach green, the 1510, and just glaze that a little bit onto the red here as well. Just on this upper part where I can see a little bit of it kind of coming through. And just help blend those colors together. Now I think we'll go ahead and blend all of this out, and then when it's dry, we'll come back and we can do our details on top. And I just like to use a water brush for something like this when it's fairly small, but you can use whatever brush you have. And I think I'm going to start the same way we laid our pencils down. So I'm going to start in the highlights and then work our way into the darker colors. And I hope you can see that hint of purple that we had there. Anywhere I need to create a little lighter shadow or a little lighter highlights, I'm just picking up some of that pigment. And like I said, I'll go over top afterwards with our white to create even some more highlights in there. But whenever I'm blending anything out, whether it be colored pencils or anything water-based, I always find it easier to go from light to dark so that you don't end up losing your lighter highlights. And I'm just taking my time blending this out. And now I'm just starting to blend out some of those darker areas. So I hope you can see we're starting to get some of that contrast in there. I'm just getting a little bit more water on my brush just to help it flow. And I forgot to blend that highlight out there, so we'll just leave that one for now and I'll blend it out after. Whenever I feel like I have too much water on my brush, I just dab it off onto the paper. And I'm just going to go in and do the highlight area. And I'm just going to go around and just blend some of the edges a little bit. And I'm just gonna let the cat out real quick, okay? And I'm gonna continue blending into the strawberry. So I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm going to start with blending the highlights, and then I'm gonna blend the seeds, and then I'll blend everything else together. You can see, even though we laid the highlights down here pretty lightly, it still is coming out pretty pigmented. And if I blend into any of the other areas by accident, that's fine. It's all going to get blended together anyway. And I'm just trying to soften that color even a little bit more. Oops. Now where these are ink, that's probably not going to lift up. So you want to be pretty careful if you can. You could, you know, if you make a mistake like that, you could go in the background and make some scribbles or something. But I mean, we could go ahead and try to lift it with a little bit of water. And some of it might come up. But where these are ink and they're permanent, it's not all going to lift up. So just be careful with that on your piece. And you could always go over top with some white afterwards to hide that, if this is like a piece that you want to give to someone or whatever. Okay, so I'm going to do all the seeds right now. Actually, you know what? I'm going to blend everything else first, and then we'll do the seeds last. And just give me a moment, the cat wants back in. Okay, sorry about that. If you've seen any of my other tutorials, you would have heard the cat in the background. So I've just got a bit much water. So right now I'm just taking my time and just going around these. So I'm just going to blend around all the seeds first so that we keep those areas nice and dark. And if you have to go down to a smaller brush for this, go ahead. Because this is a pretty small area that we're trying to blend. Okay, and now that we've gone around all the seeds, I'm just going to fill in the rest of the area here. And then we'll do our seeds last. And I really like this sort of watercolor like effect that you can get with the Inktense pencils. And you can also keep layering them up if you want it even smoother. You can certainly do that too. So you could just go over top with the same colors that we've used, and you'll get an even smoother transition. Now, if you watched the piece that I did with the, I think it was the blueberries with the Inktense the first time, that one was sped up, but I did go over that a couple of times because I wanted them to be a little bit smoother. So again, I'm just trying to be as careful as I can, going around all of these areas. If I mix into the wrong area, it's not too big of a deal. I can always go over it and fix it. And I'm trying to work fairly quickly so I don't get too much streakiness. I don't mind some because that's just how water-based mediums kind of turn out unless you layer them up quite a bit. So I don't mind a bit of that, but I want to avoid any unnecessary areas doing that. And you can see how bright this color is coming out compared to our other areas now that we've got it all down. And I'm just bringing some of that bright color that I have on my brush back over into this area and just making sure it all looks cohesive. So now I don't want a whole lot of water on my brush, and I'm going to go ahead and do the seeds. Now, depending what size brush you're using, you may have already, gone over the seeds a little bit when you're going around them, and that's fine. If you lose some of that color, you can always go over top of it again and put the color down and then blend it out again. And it's also kind of nice to have every seed not look the exact same either. I'm just going to move to a cleaner spot on there. And I'm just making sure some of these areas are really blended out there. Okay. Okay, and then I'm just going to blend the green out, and I'm going to go from the lighter areas down into the darker areas. And again, because I don't want the color to flow too much here, I don't want too much color on my brush, or water. Sorry, I don't want too much water on my brush. I do need just a little bit more water though. And I'm just kind of like going over top between the red and the green here just a little bit, just to help it blend. Okay. So this is where I'm going to leave this strawberry for today. Part 2 will come out on Thursday, where we sort of make our chocolate a little bit smoother and make some more bright areas in our strawberry, and then finish up with our details and our highlights on top. So make sure you're subscribed and hit the notification bell so you know when that video comes out. I hope you guys enjoyed this so far, and of course you can leave it where it is now if you want, or you can take it even further. But I will have part 2 out on Thursday. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.